Hello and welcome to Bedson and Coffee Unfiltered.
Where we will be discussing fitness, lifestyle, healthy eating habits, relationships, gas station performance pills, answering romantic queries. You have anything else, Tyler? Is there anything? Do you need help with anything right now? Because I feel like I'm in a position where I can help you with it.
I mean, and everything else that we come across as we go. But
That's
you know
it.
what it's going to be, right?
It's going to be unfiltered.
I went in not knowing what to expect.
Yeah, so
that was
Nick-
the best way to do it.
Nick Cage is creepy anyway.
Yeah.
Like if you just see Nick Cage being Nick Cage, he's kind of creepy. So
Yeah.
him being a horror character, I mean,
Yeah.
it just worked.
I remember we
It's
left the
very
movie. The first thing Laura said to me, she was like, I just can't believe that's the guy that stole the Declaration of Independence. And that's all she thought about the
The
entire
only
time.
movie that he ever, the only movie he made that I really cared for was like Raising Arizona. You remember it?
No, I don't.
That is so funny.
Nicolas Cage
It's
has been
so
around
funny.
a long time.
He has been. He's always the same character. Like no matter what he's in, he seems
Yeah.
like he's always
Some
that
of the
same
breakdown
guy.
stuff he would do though in that, it was just kind of like, the fuck?
Yeah,
Like he starts screaming in the car after the situation at the gas station with that little girl.
yeah.
She calls her
You ever
dad.
do that? Like whenever we're leaving from the podcast, like you're just in your car and you're just fucking raging. You do that, don't you?
No, I haven't in a while, you know.
Not in a while.
Yeah.
Couple weeks.
Yeah, a couple weeks.
That's good.
That movie's good though. Actually, I gave it a solid like 8 out of 10. It was
You give it
pretty
an
good.
8 out of 10?
I give it 8 out of 10.
So me and Katara and Deegan seen it. We were in Nashville for like a baseball thing, and we stopped into the mall.
Yeah.
Like the Opryland Mall or whatever. It's like, man, we got time to kill. Y'all want to watch a movie? What we want to do? So she wanted to see that, and I look over and Deegan's just like staring at the screen. Like, what the fuck is this? But it was different, but it was entertaining.
It was.
You know, yeah.
I'm glad they tied the story together too at the end. I mean, like in kind of a nonsensical way, but it was just like
Yeah.
okay, it made enough sense to me where I was like, all right, it works.
I think sometimes like they'll get an idea for a movie and they don't really know how to like close things up, and then you
Yeah.
get so far and you're like, that'll do.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'll
It
do.
worked for me. I was
Yeah.
fine with it. I was like, all right, that works.
A lot of like old movies from the 70s are like that, like the whole movie, and then at the end, the dude just gets shot in the face,
And then it's
That's
just like
that
roll
end credits
credits.
roll.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, all right, that's the end of that.
And that's how you go. That's how we got to end it.
Sometimes that happens.
Have you seen the movie Inside Out 2 yet?
I have not.
I highly recommend it, actually. It's very good.
Yeah, I watched Horizon the other day,
Which one's that?
the Western.
Huh.
Yeah,
See, there's
with,
just a lot of movies out that I
well,
can't keep up lately.
So we watched it on Amazon Prime.
Yeah.
And I dig Westerns. I like Westerns.
Yeah.
But this one, I didn't care for it, man, because it was like 20 different stories and there's like 5,000 different characters. And
Yeah.
it's a lot of shit going on at once. It's like,
Are you a big movie critic? Like, I feel like I'm not hard to please when it comes to movies. You know, like me and Laura go see a movie and we give it a shot. And afterwards, we'll be like, all right, it wasn't bad. Let's go look up the rating for it.
Yeah.
It'd be like 13%. And we're like,
Yeah.
damn, everybody's just wrecking it.
Yeah. So like my mother loves horror movies. And like that's all she fucking watches.
Sounds awesome.
She's pretty cool. My mom's pretty awesome. She's like all of 5 foot, maybe 90 pounds. And she'll be in the dark just watching horror. Like her Netflix, you know how like it'll have like suggested, it's fucking kind of scary. Like
Yeah.
you got slasher movies and serial killer documentaries and this, that, and like that's all it is. There's no comedy. There's no family. There's no nothing.
Yeah.
It's just everybody getting just
That's like my
murdered.
favorite kind of movie, though. I'm a big horror movie fan.
Yeah.
So that's typically like
I like that too.
we go see.
It's hard to find good ones though.
It is. It's kind of hit or miss. There's been some decent ones this year, though. There have been.
Yeah.
Better than most, and there's a few
What
good
was
ones
the
coming
one,
out.
the talk show one? It
The
was pretty
Late Night
good.
with the Devil.
That was actually
That's the
pretty
number
entertaining.
one movie this year so far for horror,
Yeah.
which I agree with. That was really good.
It was
kind of.
good.
It was.
When you were talking about it, I was like, what? And then I looked it up and we watched it. It was pretty good.
Yeah. It was. At one point in that movie, I literally thought I was like on drugs because I was like, did I just get hypnotized by it? Like, legitimately, I thought for a second, I was like, what just happened? Did they trick me too?
Were you on drugs?
No,
No.
not that time.
Did you feel like you had been maybe like you'd been possessed while you watched it? Did you feel like maybe
I didn't feel like possessed, but when
Did
they
you
do the
feel like-
hypnosis
did
scene,
you-
I was
yeah.
like, man, he definitely.
did you feel like a
got
demon
me.
had came inside you?
What was okay? So speaking of like, they had those 2 nun movies that came out,
Yeah.
and they were like pretty much the same movie with just like different actresses and different actors,
Right.
almost the same concept.
Yeah.
And I thought about that. I was like, did like 2 directors get together and they're like, we're gonna see who can make the best movie, bring it, like you know,
throw down.
yeah, throw down. What's topic? Nuns. And then they were, but I remember both of them kind of like, it was Immaculate, and I forgot the other one. It was like something devil, something.
Yeah.
But I thought they both kind of sucked.
Yeah. The one, the what is it, the Omen, the first Omen?
Oh, that was the one I'm talking about.
That one was actually pretty decent.
It
I
wasn't
liked
as bad as Immaculate.
Yeah.
But it's still like, after seeing Immaculate, I was like, okay, this one's a little bit better.
Yeah.
It
but it was a
ended
prequel.
better.
It was like a prequel to like the old one.
Exactly. So I mean, they already had a storyline behind it.
Yeah.
I feel like the other one, they just hired Sydney Sweeney, and they're just like, all right, let's hope for the best.
Let's
like,
run with it.
Yeah.
So this is about as good a segue as we can think of. You know, both of us talking about enjoying horror movies and all this. Today we're going to discuss mental health.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We got a lot to talk about that.
Yeah, I feel like we kind of set the stage already.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're both sharing how messed up we are.
Yeah, exactly. You got to be, numb to horror movies. It becomes that way over time, right?
It does.
Yeah.
It does. You kind of,
And I think a lot of people are afraid to talk about mental health, especially
men.
Yes, exactly. Myself even included. You see me at the gym or you see me out in public, you probably think I'm the happiest person in the world. Very, hey, how are you doing? All this stuff. And then you guess I probably didn't have any problems, but I bury those, just like most people do.
Sure.
I don't like to bring my problems on other people. So I think the best way to do that is I just hold them in and hope for the best.
Yeah.
Which isn't the best thing to do. I will tell you that. And I've had to learn that the hard way. I've experienced many things with just doing this job in general over the past decade, like severe burnout, anxiety, and all that stuff can build on you if you don't take care of it early.
It really can. And I think that's one aspect of bodybuilding or any kind of sport where a lot is expected of the competitor. You have to go through a lot. The physical side is one thing, but the mental side, the mental stress is another. And then whenever you couple that with the altering of hormones, drugs, all these things, it just gets compounded over and over. And you get to where it's hard to make sense of what is or isn't. And you can convince yourself that there's problems when there aren't. You can convince yourself things are happening that aren't. And, in your mind, that's real. Like whenever the hormones are off, and I've seen it with a lot of clients. I myself have experienced that. And it really is something that having somebody in your corner that you can talk to and not being afraid to talk to them, as far as like a coach or a trusted individual who's kind of been there, really makes a big difference.
Yeah, especially somebody can relate in those situations, because
Absolutely.
you got to keep in mind, you've been in a deprived state. You're hungry, you're tired.
Oh, absolutely.
It's hard to think, it's hard to move. And having somebody to talk to during those times I've been through it really helps. One of the reasons I still go through preps, to be honest with you, is so I can relate better to my clients.
I think it makes a huge difference. And you've got a lot of people nowadays that, they'll they'll have an education with no experience. And sometimes that can be difficult to relate to clients. It's okay, you're having them do things and you're having them in situations where they feel things and they're experiencing things that you yourself have not. So it's very difficult to relate.
Yeah.
And, I'd done a couple, 2-3 shows before I ever even helped somebody along that, you know? And I feel as though it gives me a lot more insight than if I had not. Even the weight cutting aspect of it, when I help clients make weight for classes with grappling or fighting and so on, having been down those roads myself, again, I can relate. And if you've not felt that and you don't know what they're dealing with mentally and you tell them just to suck it up, given there's cases where that is the case, where that is, part of it, but sometimes it's a little deeper than that.
Oh yeah. I read a lot of biofeedback, and the more somebody communicates with me, the better I can coach them. Yeah. And there are some things I can't help with. I will say this and make it clear, I'm a coach. I'm not a therapist. There are people that you can go to for that. Yep. But if I can help in a way or make somebody feel more calm about the situation, then of course I'm going to try that because I can relate. I've been through it. I felt horrible. I've been up to 2 hours plus cardio a day. I've been on 0 carb, 0 fat.
Yeah.
I have had to push to get myself ready for a show, and it sucks sometimes.
It does.
There's been days where like I'll wake up one morning and I'm like, man, I look like shit, and I'm all wanting to quit, and I'm wondering what's my coach doing wrong, or what am I doing wrong? And then by 12 o'clock, I'm like, man, I look fucking awesome.
Yeah.
And your mood can change drastically throughout the day. It's almost like you got something going on mentally. It's almost like a bipolar thing. Like you're like, I'm up and then down, up and then down.
Yeah. You're so subjective in those moments. Like as an athlete, as just a person in general, you know, we see ourselves all the time and we want these things, and we it's very, very difficult. That's why a lot of people have trouble coaching themselves. A lot of people might have the knowledge, but they struggle to coach themselves because it's near impossible to be subjective with yourself, because you're looking through so many lenses when you look in that mirror. Like, and what I mean by that is in your mind, like you're looking through so many things. You're subject to your own wants, your own doubts, your own fears, your own needs. You're subject to all these things. And that skews the image you're seeing.
Yeah.
Simply because you want all these things and you're afraid you're going to miss the mark, or you're thinking this, you're thinking that, and there's the doubt creeps in, and now your hormones are jacked up and you can't think straight, and you're hungry and you're irritated and whatever else. So having, you know, like you'd said too, you know, having somebody there to be objective. And that's why, like, whenever I look at the feedback, like you mentioned, I'm looking at all these things. And sometimes when I talk to the client, every now and then I'll just give them a phone call. If they're in prep, like I'll give them a phone call.
A lot can be solved with a phone call.
You darn right.
And I
Absolutely.
try so hard to do that. Like there's been some people and they're in a bad situation. I'm like, hey, let's have a call. We can solve this real quick. And 95% of the time that does solve it.
Yep.
And then, you know, I have some people that just won't do that. They end up falling off deep on the deep end. And I'm just like, well, I tried to help.
Yeah. And, you know, communication is key, you know, with your coach, but also from a coach's standpoint, first and foremost, I think above anything else, caring for your clientele is paramount. If you don't care for your clientele and you don't, you know, care about their health and make that the number one priority, I don't think this is the job for you.
No.
You'll find something that you do care about. But with that, talking to the client and not only hearing what they say, but how they say it.
Yes.
You know, like, you know, I know you're saying you're good, and I might not even address it. I might not even address it to you that I know something's going on. I might make adjustments, or I might bring something up.
Yep.
Just to talk to you. I might say, hey, you know what, man, one time I was in prep and this happened to me. So if you start noticing this, just talk, and then they start opening up, whatever. But, you know, again, being it's very hard not to be subjective when it's yourself. So having somebody there to give you feedback and help you with that, it makes a huge difference, man.
It does. And communication is a big part of that.
It really is.
You can't be afraid to mention if something's going on if you're struggling. Don't have too much pride. I've had people struggle in prep and they're having a hard time and they break down and they still win their pro card, or they still win it overall.
Yeah.
Because they told me they wanted to go ahead and get that out of the way and be like, hey, and I've had some like, man, I didn't want to disappoint you.
Yeah.
And I get that, you know, but also if I don't know, I can't help. If you don't talk about what's going on in your life or express that, then I can't help. And sometimes that does come to lead to pushing back a show or dropping out of prep completely. And that is completely okay. I respect people who come to a sense and they're like, hey, right now is not the right time. Like I had a woman earlier this year, and you know, we've been together for years, and she was in prep and she's also in school for her another degree. She's managing over 40 plus people at her workplace. Like it's hard. And she's at the same time trying to prep. And I remember she was like, hey, can we do a phone call one day? And we talked, and she was like, I just don't think it's a good time right now. If I'm not going to be able to give my all to this, and everybody else is and I'm going against, I'm setting myself up for failure. And I was like, that's fair. You know,
Absolutely,
that's completely acceptable. Like the stage will always be there. And I try to say that to people, like, you want to make sure that you can put your all into this. And sometimes that takes a little bit of work to set yourself up in the correct environment first.
It really does. And being honest with yourself here is key. If you are going through issues in your life and there's stress involved. There's never a perfect scenario where everything's just perfect, but when you're subject to more stress than normal. If you've got things going on in your life, relationship issues, or outside the norm, or you just lost a job, or something crazy in your life that's going on, starting a prep's not going to help that.
Yeah.
And it's going to, again, magnify those issues. Now, you get deeper into prep, you're an enhanced athlete, we start throwing drugs on top of that. All of that is going to continue to spiral. So making sure that in your personal life, things are, as in a good spot prior to that. Just being honest with yourself about it makes a big, big difference.
Yeah. And it's one of those things too, where I always tell people, before you start any type of weight loss goal, contest prep, anything, make sure everything is set in stone in a way. Like, you don't want to have any injuries. You don't want to have any family drama going on.
You're already working from a deficit in those
You
situations.
don't want to have anything going on with your career, like a career change. That's one where I'm like, okay, that's something you got to focus on. You got to put some of these things as a priority over bodybuilding, or else bodybuilding is not going to be successful.
Absolutely. And what you said there, a priority, like for most people, well, for 99.99 repeating percent of the people that get involved with this sport will never pay their bills.
No.
And it's going to be just something that adds to their life, sure, but it's not going to be number one on the priority list.
No.
Most people that get involved with this, they're going to have a career outside of this. They're going to have a family, et cetera, et cetera. And, those things have to be in position first. I mean, I've seen people get in prep and then lose their job, and then now they can't afford.
And that's bringing more stress on you, because you think about, you're going to start having anxiety over what you're going to do after the prep. You're going to be sitting there trying. You can't focus on them going in.
It's a very expensive hobby.
Extremely. And financials are key there. Like if you don't have something set up to make sure that you can almost take a slight break from work and life to be able to compete and come in your best possible, then it's a hard thing to do. Like if you're worrying about money the entire time and you're trying to go do a show, it's going to be a bad look. It's going to be rough, because if you're having to cut corners on stuff, and you remember your competition's not cutting corners. No. Everybody's coming in 100%. They're doing everything they can. When it comes to bodybuilding, this is like, people spend their money on this like they do on like redoing a car. Sure. It becomes like their sole hobby. So they invest everything they have in it. And when you have to think about that. Everybody else you're going against, they're giving this 100%. They're doing everything they can to win. In your mind, you better tell yourself that at least. You're the people. You better plan that everybody coming is coming in perfectly. Yeah, that's how I always planned in my mind. I think one of the main things, and this is something I want to talk about, because this is what's been the hardest for me as a coach, is over the years. Like, when I first started up, it was easy. Like, putting people on stage was all I had to do. Now, and then people started doing better and better and better. And then it was almost like a constant pressure thing of like, I was almost expected to always have somebody win. Sure. Like, no matter what, it was like, if you go to me, like, they're expected to win, which when it's a subjective sport like bodybuilding, we do not control the outcome. No, you can't close. Like, you can't win that like a fight or like a grappling match or like even like a powerlifting. Even with powerlifting, you've got this standard, and you get white lights, you get red lights. Yeah. I've had to always subjective. Really come to terms with the fact that I can make somebody look the best they possibly can be at that time for their body, how they are built, and they can still not win. Absolutely. And it sucks, because sometimes I will have somebody get second place or third place, and I'm talking to them, and they're like, "What do you think happened?" And I'm like, "That person was just better than you." It's you just need more time. Yeah. And you need to grow. And it sucks, because it's like, I want everybody to win and have the best experience possible. But that's one thing I really struggled with. And I know I talked to a lot of other coaches, and they agree. Absolutely. Is it's like, we have no control over the outcome. Yeah. And I think any coach worth their salt that cares about their clients, obviously you want them to do their best possible. Yeah. And the last thing you want is for them to feel like you in any way let them down, or and that does weigh on you mentally, because you get very invested. Oh yeah. You're talking to these people weekly, daily, and their goals are your goals. Yeah. And you've worked at this as a team. So the mental stress along with the coaching, if you actually care about your clientele,
there's a great, the weight of that can sometimes be very, very heavy.
Oh, yeah.
And the more clientele you have, especially competitive athletes or any of that, like it really gets to you sometimes.
I try to make it so I don't take it too personal,
Sure.
One thing I realized with coaching over time, and I speak this to a lot of the newer coaches, everything, at one point, everybody's going to leave.
Sure.
And that's just how it is, and majority of them, it'll be because they're just done bodybuilding, or they move on to a new goal in life, or they got a new promotion, they got married, they're planning a family, and stuff like that. Or it could just be on bad terms because they were upset. And it's going to happen. And I've had to realize that because I've had people come and go over the years. I've had some return to me after being gone for 3 years, and it just happens. It's just part of the job. So, but like you said, I get so emotionally invested in people because I do care so much. Like I care more than anything. Like, and you talk to them every day, you get to know their life, you get to know their family. Yeah. It almost becomes like they're so close to you. It's like they are family.
Sure.
And then so seeing them upset over getting like a second place or something like that is like a demoralizing feeling. It's like you let down a family member and you're like, oh my God, like did I disappoint them?
Yeah. And it's, again, there, objectivity there being key. Like as a coach, you can see maybe why the other athlete was chosen over them, or you can see these things and trying to relate that to them, in a moment where they're pretty vulnerable.
Yeah.
They've just got their feelings hurt and stuff. And then whenever you sit down and you have that conversation, discussing that with them and hoping that they understand.
Yeah.
And that they're willing to put in the work needed. And again, you can't plan for who shows up with it. You don't know who's going to show up. You don't know. And this is a sport that, again, it's always going to be subjective because it's a judgment call. You can have all kinds of people, bring in their best, and it's still just bodybuilding is a sport where you can have a losing record and still be the best in the world.
Yeah.
Because with two teams, only one wins and one loses.
Yeah.
But when you have 40 men up there and only one wins, that means the other 39 took an L.
Yeah.
So you can have an absolutely terrible record and still be the best in the world in bodybuilding. Like, how many shows did Ronnie Coleman do before he won a pro show?
Oh yeah. People don't think about that though.
No,
they only see the wins.
Yeah.
They don't see the last place he took at one of the first pro shows he did.
No.
And nobody thinks about that stuff because
nobody remembers the 3-pointers that Michael Jordan missed.
No, we put all the pressure on ourselves.
Exactly.
And I think more people are seeing like a 19-year-old kid winning his first show, and they're like, why didn't I win at 19 at my first show? And it's like they don't think about all the work they've done.
Yeah.
That's something I really have to look at whenever I work with people. Like, for example, Malcolm, our first year working together, I always tell people this. He got second to last in his open class. And we may not agreed with the placing. We were kind of like, oh, that's odd. But, we couldn't do anything about it. So I remember talking to him and I was like, man, just stick with me. I'll make sure we win. And he trusted me. A year later, we do another show. First show we do, overall champion.
Yeah.
Next show we do, we go to North Americans and he goes for his first shot at a pro card. And he gets one spot away from it. And when I tell you that destroyed me, like I remember walking to the car after that and I called my wife and I was like, I'm a failure. I just failed him. And, I get a message from Malcolm though. I remember he was out to eat with his family and he was like, man, thank you so much for everything you've done for me. You've changed my life, like all this stuff. And I'm like, I'm forgetting to celebrate the wins and how far we've come.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's like I didn't realize that until I was put in perspective from his view of how much we've done so far.
Absolutely.
And now he's a pro and, it just took more time. And that's all it was. But it was like I beat myself to shit over that second place, man. It was crazy. And like I know other people do that too. It's just we expect so much from ourselves and we expect so much from our athletes that if they don't do as well as we thought, it almost puts us into like a depression almost like, oh my God, what could I have done better?
Yeah.
But in reality, you did everything you could.
Absolutely.
There was nothing wrong.
Yeah. And I mean, given it is a judgment call, all you can do is bring your very best.
Yeah.
You can't, it's not like you can prepare for an opponent like in other sports. So you just have to bring somebody in at their very best. And that's why, again, back to being willing to not to cut corners and doing the hard work. Everything comes in, especially when you get up there on stage and you start, thinking, man, did I really push in cardio? Did I, that little bit of food I added? You don't want that feeling on stage.
I remember what I always tell my clients now, if they're about to go on stage, is I feel confident if we're leaving it up to the judges.
Yeah.
Like if we brought the best look we could possibly bring for that person, if they did the work, they didn't cut any corners, they crossed everything.
Yeah.
We're leaving it up to the judges.
Yeah.
And that's the best thing we can do.
Yeah. I remember my coaches are always like, leave it in the ring. You know,
Yep.
if you did everything you could, you know, and that's it. You know, if you beat yourself, that's a lot harder to digest.
Yeah.
And it's a lot harder to deal with. But so as far as the mental health side of things, and I know you've worked with clients also that have used, you know, medicines and prescription drugs for these sort of things. But a lot of times whenever we're in prep and so on, we can see things changing, and especially whenever we have other issues that we have to deal with too. Like I've even myself, you know, been prescribed, you know, SSRIs, SNRIs, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors,
Same. I've had to
selective
do the same
norepinephrine
myself.
reuptake inhibitor. Yeah. And, you know, so whenever we start, I've seen those make it a little different trying to prep. I've seen, you know, some issues come from that as far as seeing the body not respond quite the same way.
Yeah.
Hunger changes, a lot of different things change with those. And I think it seems those are becoming a lot more common.
Oh yeah. It's so easy to get now, and it's very common. It's one of those things too, where, for myself, even I remember I didn't want to accept that I needed any help, and I eat healthy, I train, I do cardio every morning, I cross off all the lifestyle things. I don't really drink alcohol, don't do anything like that. So that was like one thing where I was like, okay, well, I have nothing else to try. So I had to give that a shot at one point here earlier this year because I was so down. And sometimes you do have to do that. Yeah, and I see a lot of people talk so poorly about those, and they're like, well, why are you using those? There's so much better ways. And I'm like, yeah, for some people, yeah. But if your lifestyle's, you know.
If you've checked off all the other boxes.
Yeah, if you checked off all the other
then,
boxes.
I mean, come on. You know. And
yeah.
Especially, and I said that just because, and I know you can relate, but especially as men, a lot of times we're told, you know, you just got to shoulder it, you just got to carry on, you just got to do this, you got to do that. And, you know, I'd made a post about mental health and you know, men's health.
Yeah. And
I had a lot of people reach out to me from that. And several of them actually asked for this episode. But, you know, that's something that a lot of times, guys, we just suppress it. And we just think, well, this is just it. I have to deal with it. And sometimes, you know, whenever we're talking about, you know, those chemicals in your mind, and it's very difficult to sort through that on your own, because that's what's making you think the things you're thinking, and in your mind it's real. And it's very hard to deal with those. Like, I actually seen a doctor about that myself, and I don't mind a bit to be transparent about it. We went through several different medications, and none of them I was able to metabolize right. So finally we did the genetic testing where they swab your mouth and they check, and anybody that I couldn't recommend this more. Like, that was the big thing that helped me understand, okay, that's why these things aren't working, and that's why this one particular medicine works okay. But apparently I couldn't take hardly anything. I metabolized them much differently. And then I naturally had an issue where I don't create dopamine the same way as an average healthy person. And so then things started making a lot more sense to me. And then I was able to kind of work through things. And then sometimes, honestly, just knowing that there's an issue kind of helps you with things. Yeah. It's like, if you don't know there's a problem, then you're thinking, well, why do I feel this way? But whenever you have recognized that, and it gives you, you know, something to understand and know that, okay, I got to work through this, or I got to, you know, they're helping me fix this, whatever. Yeah. It helps a lot.
Yeah. That's one thing I had to talk to Laura about, is I was just like so down, and it was almost like I didn't have anybody that could relate, or I felt like what I would talk about, I'm like, nobody cares. That's a stupid problem to have. And I think that's what a lot of men do. They're just like, well, our problems that's not a real problem. You know, other people have it worse, which, you know, that's how I always try to think about things. I'm like, okay, everybody else has it worse, but your problems are your problems. They're still problems. Yep. And I had to realize that. And it's okay for that. And I mean, I ended up getting with a therapist for about 2-month period, and I still use them once a month just to make sure that I can gather these thoughts and have an unbiased opinion on kind of what I'm going through at that time.
Yeah.
And that took me a lot to do. I'll be honest with you. It took me a lot to do because I consider myself a very mentally tough person. And
sure.
And that's fine, you know, but whenever I made it clear to people, I made a post about it too, you know, when I made it clear to people that I was going through something, somebody reached out to me and they're like, thank you. Thank you for being honest. Like, you know, I would have never guessed that from you. Like, I talked to you literally yesterday and you seem great. And I'm like, yeah, I know. That's what we're taught to do. Suppress it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think too, you know, like competitive athletes, you know, I've competed in a sport one way or another for the last 20 years.
Yeah.
And I think we feel like, okay, well, this is, you know, something we have to deal with. You know, I've done this, I've been through this, I've whatever. And as, you know, competitive athletes and stuff, we're used to tackling things head on and just working through that pain or working through that suffering. And there's some things that just, you can't really bend that to your will. You know, especially whenever like I genuinely believe in my mental fortitude over anything. Like if you tell us to go to me or you quit, I'm betting on me every time. And like with that, if you're relying on your mental fortitude to get through certain things, but it's your mind itself that's giving you the issue because there's a chemical imbalance or there's, you know, a hormonal issue or whatever. I mean, your very source of protection is breaking. So it's something that I can't stress enough, man. You know, like don't be afraid to talk to a doctor about it. Don't be afraid to talk to and like seeing a therapist even.
That's one thing. I always tell people this, and I touched on it a little bit earlier, but I am here to get people in the best shape of their life. Like I am here to coach you to the best shape that you can possibly be in, get you where you want to be, whether that be fat loss, getting a contest shape, growing muscle. But there are some things I'm not qualified to do. Absolutely. And I'm very honest about that. And I do have some people where I'm like, it would be good for you to see a therapist. I've even talked recently to one of my clients who is a mental health therapist. That's what he does for a living, about possibly bringing him on our team for somebody to go to because he can relate to them as far as, you know, when it comes to eating disorders or anxiety, depression, things like that do come along with everyday life, especially doing bodybuilding or doing anything fitness related. I think a lot of us think gym is our therapy. And I hear that all the time. Like, well, I go to the gym, that's enough. And I'm like, yeah, but you know, that's always internalizing what you're going through in a way. Yeah. And if you do that for too long, it's going to catch up to you. I learned that the hard way. Big time. Yeah. And, you know, everything coming back to the discussion about sports and bodybuilding and so on, you know, if we want to be in the best shape of our lives, like you had said, well, I mean, your body only does what the mind tells it to. Yep. And if your mind, you know, whenever we speak of health, I mean, that's everything. If your mind's not healthy, your body's not going to be. And I'm telling you right now, dude, stress will kill you. You know, stress will ruin your body. Yeah. And just the mental stress that you know, your body will show that. Yeah. You know, it really will. Where the mind goes, the body will follow. I feel like 100%. That should be like one of my catchphrases at this point because I think I say that to everybody. But if you are not in a good mental space when you're trying to reach your goals, it's going to be a lot harder. Not saying it's impossible, but it's going to hinder some results. Stress, like you said, is a silent killer. Yeah. It's going to cause a lot of health problems over time too. You don't really think about what some of that stuff's doing to you. Oh, absolutely. Ulcers or anything. Man. Like just what it does to your body's ridiculous. That's like me, man. Well, I remember back whenever we first put the offer on the house, we were trying to sell a new house, all that. I was coaching so many competitors at the time, trying to juggle bodybuilding myself, everything. My digestion went to hell. It was like I went from, you know, I was hardly eating any food at the time. I was starting to try to push size, and I'm like, I'm not hungry at all. I could just not eat and be better off because I'm so stressed out. And if you don't have an appetite, if you're not sleeping well, that's stuff you got to address first before you try to reach any goal, go any direction.
Yeah, I mean, you're overlooking that and pushing that to the back burner so you can go to the gym and put in, more work there to beat your body up farther. Like you're stepping over dollars to pick up dimes.
Yeah.
Like you're really sacrificing your health further by doing so.
Yeah.
Getting that stuff in check is going to pay dividends in the future.
I really think you need to watch the movie Inside Out too. Highly recommend that for anybody. It's funny because it's like a kid's movie. I feel like the first one was definitely a kid's movie, and the first one it discusses like a kid as a baby and them growing up. Well, the second one, man, it goes over the kid as an adult, and it's very relatable to people as they get older.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I highly recommend it.
I got you. Is that like a Pixar movie?
Yeah, I think it is. Pixar makes some good movies, though.
Pixar does make some good movies. It's I had somebody ask me, like, we were talking about body types.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, Pixar moms. Like, if we're, I mean, I'm a fan. Like the Pixar moms, that's,
somebody's got to create
slim,
that and
thick.
be thinking that. They're like, I made this for Eli Coffey.
And I appreciate you.
Yeah. I'm curious. It's got to be the same person for each movie. It's got to be like one person.
Did you do Uber Eats again?
No, we just got a doorknob. I think that's probably our guest.
I bet that is our guest.
No.
Yeah, I mean, he's out there right now. We can talk a little longer.
Yeah.
So what were you saying about peptides and hormones?
Oh, yeah. There was a question we had about that, isn't there?
I don't know. Was there?
Yeah, you said you had a client, and they asked. There's a lot of people actually been asking that. What's the difference between peptides and hormones?
Well, I can't make a peptide.
Huh. You can make. But Eli can make.
Hey, watch it now. Thank you guys for tuning in. This has been Bedson and Coffee Unfiltered. Thank you guys for listening.
Make sure to go follow us on social media.